Our next person is Dave Barganier, who comes to us from Unite, Pennsylvania, or Unite, PA. He marched on Washington on September 12th, along with all the rest of you, and he's here to address us about uniting.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Campaign for Liberty. I would like to continue on the theme of how we need to unite together at this time in our history. There's a quote from Thomas Paine: if there is trouble, let it be on my day, that my children may have peace. And that's why I got involved with this, because what we're looking at is basically a threat on my children and grandchildren's future. And if I don't do anything now, then it falls on them later. And so we do have trouble on our doorstep, folks, and we need to, we cannot accept the direction. Go higher. Okay, we cannot accept the direction that our country's headed. The only way we're going to deal with this is if we unite together. It is up to us to secure our freedom so that our children will have that peace. We need to stand united, and we have an obligation to God, family, and country to protect and defend our Constitution. We need to learn more about this Constitution and the truth about the heroic men who framed it. The more you will appreciate the unquestionable divine influence that God had on the birth of our nation. And despite the current destructive direction that our country's heading, the good news is that this is still one nation under God. A recent Gallup poll shows that 84% of this nation firmly believes in Jesus Christ. And another poll indicates that 94% believe in God. And another poll says that 80% approve of voluntary prayer in school, and 89% oppose abortion. Now, the conclusion is inescapable. Although we have been led to believe that we, the 94% who believe in God and are the minority, but we definitely are not the minority, we are the majority. While polls show that the overwhelming majority of our citizens are ready to return to constitutional and godly principles in our government, it is clear that the vast number of our elected officials are not. Now, whose fault is that? Well, James Garfield, one of our presidents, put it this way: more than ever before, the people are responsible for the character of their government. If the body are ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, then it is because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it is because the people demand these high qualities to represent them in the national legislature. If the next generation does not find us as a great nation, it will be because those good citizens who typify the enterprise, the culture, and the morality of the nation do not aid in controlling the political affairs. Proof of that is up to us, the good citizens. There's a good example of this. There were 5 U.S. senators running for Senate in 1986. The 5 candidates who stood for returning constitutional and godly principles to government were defeated by a collective total of only 57,000 votes. That's less than 12,000 votes per state. Yet in those 5 states, there were over 5 million Christians who did not even vote. If only 1 of 100 non-voting Christians, that's 1%, had voted for the candidate supporting the Constitution and godly principles, those 5 would have been elected and would have created a 10-vote swing in the Senate, because the 5 left-wing candidates would have been voted out and 5 patriotic and godly men would have been voted in to take their place. This shows us our candidates are most often defeated not by activists and radicals, but by inactive Christian voters. More importantly, this means that we do have the power to make a difference. When patriotic Americans and Christians begin to believe that we can make a difference and unite, we begin to act like a majority that we are. And we can make that difference. The ability to change the current situation is in our hands. As Edmund Burke's famous quote says, all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do what?
Nothing.
Nothing. That's right. There is much that good people can do to stop the triumph of evil. It is time to believe and to behave differently. We are not a minority, we are the majority. It is time to declare at the ballot box that we will no longer allow officials to embrace the values of the 6% who do not believe in constitutional or godly principles to override the rights of the 94% who do. We must remove officials who do not comply with traditional, historical, or biblical principles and replace them with those who will. We can make a difference, and our vote does count. Too often, somebody who we thought might be a good candidate is elected, and later we end up regretting his public stands and the things that he votes for. Much of this can be eliminated if the right questions are asked during the election process. We need to know more about a candidate than just professional qualifications. We need to know the fundamental core beliefs that qualify him to represent us. Now, in Matthew chapter 13, Jesus tells a story. Good people had a good field with good seeds. However, the enemy came in and planted bad seed along with the good seed, thus contaminating the entire field. What was it that gave the enemy this opportunity? The answer, Jesus says, is while the good men were sleeping, the enemy came in. But we're not sleeping anymore. And Jesus, he never faulted the enemy for doing what he did, because it was their task and their purpose to do that, to destroy the whole field. Jesus placed the fault on the good men who were sleeping, allowing the enemy to do what they did. Very bluntly, what we see taking place in our government these days is happening because we who consider ourselves the good people were sleeping. It is vital that we develop an attitude of fearless devotion coupled with a foundation of uncompromising principles. We can no longer see things in terms of left versus right, but right versus wrong. God wants his people to be prominent in every arena, including the government. Our government won't be redeemed from without. It must be redeemed from within by people of constitutional and godly principles and integrity. We no longer live in a country where we can take for granted the security of our own rights and freedoms. Today, the American way of life is being threatened. We must be engaged in the process and be united in our common ideals for limited government and individual freedom. We, the people, have awakened over the past 8 months, and we realize that 2010 will be one of the most important elections in our history. We need to dedicate ourselves to educating and motivating voters to affect the next election. It is up to us to preserve the principles set forth in our Constitution and uphold the values of our founding fathers. We must reestablish the conviction that constitutional and biblical principles are vital to our national success, and we must be willing to pursue their reinstatement. In recent decades, we have wrongly allowed the very principles and values which produce and maintain our prosperity, our security, our morality, and our national stability to be restricted or even eliminated from American society. I want to close with words from George Washington. The favorable smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself has ordained. Thank you very much. God bless America.